animation backgrounds can be a little time-consuming.
And we're not just talking about big establishing shots. No, even in a quote-unquote simple dialogue scene. A wide shot, a tight shot, the reverse angle. You could have a fancy angle. Whee! You could have an angle this way, or you could have an angle this way. But with every angle, you were drawing the same thing. The same doors, the same furniture, the same ketchup and mustard in every shot. You are wasting hours trying to figure out where do all the condiments go?
Where all do the...
What if there was a way to make all those hours less hours? Wow! And we're gonna do it with the power of 3D. And look, we are not saying, hey, instead of making it in 2D, just make it into 3D and voila, you're done. Although making it in 3D is a perfectly valid approach. Sorry. No. We're talking to you, the person who wants to do your backgrounds by hand. You masochist. Or is it sadist? We are going to be working with Blender. Mainly because, and yes, I know, Blender can be a bit... Oh, I'm so sorry, we all can't be Procreate. Well, we've drilled down the whole interface into 4 little icons, and then we can paint with the brushes with names like Tidewalker. Who's ever heard of a brush called Tidewalker? Ooh, pretty. But better still, we'll show you how to do it in any 2D program, Photoshop, Procreate, Animate. Heck, you can even do it on paper. Better still, I'm going to show you more than one way to incorporate 3D into a 2D workflow, because some people will want to use a little and some people will want to use a lot. So let's get on with it. Now, whatever flips your pencil, even if it's Tidewalker, it all starts with a sketch. And look, by no means do you first have to have a fully rendered and painted out sketch to bring in. This can be very, very simple. All right, are you ready? Let's get into it. So we're gonna start with the new file. And of course, the first thing we're gonna do is destroy the default cube. So we're starting with a relatively blank canvas here. And one of the first things we need to do is check to see our measurement units. So we go over to here, to scene properties, which I already have up, go to units, and see here in the United States, that's imperial. Would you like the metric? Well, I need to stop for a moment because it turns out during the course of this tutorial, I discovered that in Blender 5.0, things have changed again as far as how you import images. We are going to look at what appears to be just 4 examples of me bringing in the floor texture. So when you hit Shift A to add something new, in this case an image, you now have 4 choices. The first one in the upper left is a version of bringing in a reference. Another one is bringing it in as a background. I brought the one here as a mesh plane and this last one as an empty. Problem number 1 is the moment we leave orthographic view or facing this one dead on, the background one vanishes. A problem number 2 is that if I introduce this cube that I have here and we go to render mode, only one of them is even casting a shadow. Most troubling is that when you go to camera view and then you just want to render your image out, only one of them shows up. Most of what we're doing here, you're going to want to bring back into a 2D program, so we need them to render out, so you will choose Mesh Plane. Now that that's out of the way, we are going to hit the number 3 to go to our side view. Then we hit Shift A to add, in this case, a Mesh Plane. And ta-da! Our first thing we're going to bring in for our backgrounds are the characters! What? Okay, why are we bringing in a character first when this is all about backgrounds? It's because we would like the measurements of your fictional world to kind of match the real world. But hey, sometimes it's difficult to look at your background and know exactly how tall that building or that tree should be, but you know how big it should be relating to your characters. And better still, you probably know the exact height of your characters because you've most likely done things like model sheets, right? If we can set your character's height properly, now when you bring in the world around them, from furnishings to buildings to vegetation, you'll get a general idea of what looks right, even if your world is completely off kilter.
And even if you don't, you could just make a cube that is 5 or 6 feet tall, and that would give you a good placeholder to start.
All we're doing here is just continuing to import mesh planes to start developing our lovely scene here. In Photoshop, I had painted out every angle of my Krusty Krab Bob's Restaurant, floor, ceiling, all the different walls. So all I had to do here was just simply crop into one of the walls, export it as a PNG, especially if it had a window or door or like the counter, and then brought each piece into Blender and then just scale it up to the proper size and maneuver them all into place.
Now, you could be the kind of person who doesn't name their layers and organize their files and is just cube, plane, PNG, but you're not the kind of person that does that, right? Because...
No, nice things.
So, you want to see how crazy this got for my last big project? This is how crazy it got. Everything you see in here is basically a textured wall or textured geometry. So you can see what was built out and then what was basically just a large plane like I've been showing you. All this to say that now I have this from every possible angle. I mentioned earlier that there were multiple ways to bring 2D into your 3D and into your 2D, into your 3D. And like the best cooking shows, instead of me trying to rework something that's already been built, I'm going to quickly here time-lapse build something real simple off of a very basic sketch to show you different ways to bring in your 2D. This is more of an introduction into these more organic, handmade techniques that you can add to your 3D environment. If you want a more in-depth tutorial into how to do any of these techniques, just let me know in the comments. So ready, set, go!
Choose your fighter!
Texture painting. Now at its most basic, it is just a way to paint on the 3D models. Now it's nothing as robust as Substance Painter and similar programs, but it allows you to just paint on the surface, and for some of you that may be perfect. There are enough brushes and techniques here to get a very painterly look if that's what you're going for. Now for this to work, you're going to have to do some UV unwrapping, and always remember to save your texture files, because if you close the program they will vanish. UV textures. Now of course there's a million tutorials covering how to apply and build out UV textures and how to do unwrapping. Even though this is a very common technique, I think maybe some people might think of this more as how to get a very photorealistic look, something cinematic, as opposed to something that can still look very cartoonish, kind of like what I did, so that's why that one's there. Grease pencil! Last up is grease pencil, which has been around for a few years now and just seems to be getting more and more robust within Blender. This obviously deserves a much larger video. Grease pencil can do so many things for animators, and be worked into the 3D in so many ways, from adding extra layers of texturing like you're seeing here, to doing like full-on 2D animation plates within the 3D environment, to tossing almost all the 3D aside and making it strictly a standard 2D kind of environment. Each of these techniques of bringing in 2D elements or creating them right there inside the program can give you so many options for your own animations.
Now hold on, you might be thinking, wait a second, there's a lot of lengthy involved steps here. I thought the entire point of this video was to save time. So how exactly are we doing that?
Oh, I can help. It's Firefly. Come and play with us, Tommy.
I am not sure I wish to play with the AI. How is all of this going to save you time? One word. The cameras. Look at my set. I've got cameras all over the place. When I was working on the last big project, I suddenly found myself being dragged to a halt trying to figure out, once I flipped an angle, how tall was that counter again? And was the door the right height from this distance? Should it be this far away? Or maybe you didn't have enough room for all the characters to share the space. Or worse still, you get something that looks right. You think you've remembered everything, and the moment you bring in your characters, now it looks like something more out of Willy Wonka. Animation as much as possible, is supposed to be about drawing and painting and movement and bringing things to life. So we're going back to the little mini set I was building here, added a little bit more color and texture to it, and now I've added a few different cameras. So we've got our characters from a couple different angles. So I bet you can guess what the next step is. We render. So you choose a camera, and to go from one camera to another, you just simply click the little green icon next to that camera. You set up your render settings, you set up your folder, and if you want it to be a JPEG or a PNG, totally up to you. And you render each piece out. Now, to finally get back to 2D, you take your JPEG and you bring it into Photoshop, or you bring it into Procreate, or you bring it into Animate, or you print it out on an old printer and put a piece of tracing paper over it, and you can do it really by hand. But now you've got a solid guide. You've already explored the perspective. Heck, you can even explore angles that you never thought possible, because what's great about this technique is that it gives you the space to play, to explore. What happens if the camera goes really high? What if you have a moving camera? But whether you do it a little or a lot, you've got the angle you want, and you can get back to making your background instead of not. And during the course of making this, I have learned even more fun techniques that I am dying to share that I'll just do in a future video. So I think that's enough insanity for today. Bye!
Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe for more.